Don't cry out loud, keep it inside. Learn how to hide your feelings, except for now because Mars is stationed direct, so get it out. Hello Gemini, welcome back. This is your first horoscope from me for the year 2023. Welcome back into my lair. I hope you're doing all right. I hope that you're feeling a bit of release, a bit of a breakthrough with Mars stationing direct on, I think it was January the 13th that this happened. Good for you. Let some of that pressure ease. When we think of Mars and we think of everything that it signifies, there's a lot of help, positivity in terms of being confident and being forthright and self-assured. There's also the shadow side of that is aggression and anger and vitriol and violence can sometimes happen too. So it's a combustive energy to have pinging around in your first house, Gemini. I hope that with the forward activation, with the forward release, you can feel a bit calmer in your own self and then take some of that energy and maybe apply it to your moneymaker. If we think about Mars moving from Gemini into Cancer, what we've learned in the Gemini area gets brought forward. And so Mars will be in Cancer, I think in March of this year, March 23rd, I think. That's a horoscope for another time. But I want you to consider the planetary movements as progressions, as these points of activation. And the lessons that we've learned during Mars's time in our first, we can carry forward into the next position on our chart. So from Gemini to Cancer, that's first house to second house, our money-making potential, our values, and our talents. I hope that that's a nice little burst of enthusiasm to start you off with this horoscope, Gemini. I missed out on the Cancer full moon. I was taking a bit of respite for myself. I was feeling a bit clogged up and snotty and sorry for myself. So I did allow a little private ritual of my own to occur and to celebrate the lunation, but without documenting it, without producing work. I think there's something in the culture that has us so preoccupied with our quantity of production, with our output levels. And that can sometimes get in the way of the quality of what it is we're trying to say or trying to share with other folks. I think I'm just brought back to that sentiment. I said moneymaker straight off the bat with the second house, didn't I? I think that maybe your values system might be a more interesting way to consider the second house. In a world where our measure of value is placed upon our bank balance, it's old terrain, and I find it quite boring, and I find it unproductive to think about that monetary value as a measuring stick for how much you're worth, Gemini. You're worth so much more than whatever money you have in your bank account or whatever assets you may accrue over time. It's got very little to do with the essence of life, and I think the more you speak to old people, they don't mention that at all in terms of a life well lived. They mention our relationships with other folks. They mention our experiences more than anything. So that's the first cab off the rank before we go into the Aquarian attributes of this reading. Now, I want you to think about your spiritual language, Gemini. I want you to think about what lines of study you're engaged in at the moment and how you're expanding your mind, how you're learning about the philosophies of life and how you're incorporating that knowledge into your personal ecosystem and how you might be sharing it with others. Aquarius rules your ninth house, which is where we expand the mind philosophically. It's where we publish, where we travel. There's a lofty nature to the ninth house that is limitlessness in its boundary. And so at a new moon, we get to experience a ripe evening of manifestation. So I wonder what you're thinking about right now as I say this. I wonder if there's terrain that you'd like to journey down. There's lessons that you'd like to pick up further to what it is that you know right now. I'm going to pull some intuitive tarot straight up so I don't forget, because I keep on forgetting. But in my experience of the ninth house, I kind of put my ninth house in overdrive over these last months of last year. There's a lot of books that I've opened, lots of lines of inquiry that I've investigated, and different avenues of thought that I've gone down, which has furthered my, I guess, vocabulary as far as astrology and as far as the tarot, and trying to link the two. I see that in your community, your sense of the human collective, maybe, your sense of the group enterprise, I suspect that you'll find in there some great support. So if we look at your chart in those terms, if we think about the 11th house and we think of Aries, Jupiter, the planet of expansion and optimism, is residing in Aries right now. There's a great magnification on your collective ecosystem, on your community groups, the folks that you roll with. There's a particular aspect that's occurring in there, and it includes perhaps cosmic bodies that I haven't maybe introduced very clearly into these readings, and it's only now that through my ninth house I'm learning about them and the significations of these cosmic bodies and how imperative they might be to our experience moving forward as a group, as a collective. There was a series of discoveries that occurred between the discovery of Uranus, our outer limits, and Neptune, our cosmic unknowing. Those two planets were discovered in 1783 and 1846, I believe. In the interim, there were 4 cosmic bodies similar to size of Pluto that were discovered and were given significations from the ancient pantheon. They were Ceres, Juno, Vesta, and Pallas Athena. Not in that order, I don't think. Anyhow, but these asteroids were given the feminine principle of some of the ancient texts, some of the ancient archetypes that we use in terms of translating the planetary bodies. They were found at a time when the feminine principle was coming into a courageous rebirth. Things like the women's suffrage movement occurred all around the time that these asteroids were discovered, were implanted into our cosmic consciousness. And so in astrology, they sometimes are used, they sometimes are not. There is a great deal of literature that you can read by a brilliant author called Demetra George, who has studied her life, spent her life studying the significations of these myths and these asteroids and how they show up in the personal natal chart. It's quite fascinating. I wanted to make mention of the fact that the asteroid Juno is in a direct conjunction with the asteroid Jupiter at this lunation. Another word for Juno is Hera. Another word for Jupiter is Zeus. So you can see that signification right there. There's some kind of immense coupling that's happening at this Aquarius full moon. There's an agreement here. There's a devotion to one another. Hera and Zeus were the royal family of the gods. They were the king and the queen of the gods. And I would like to think neither pulled rank. It was a toxic relationship, and they broke up and they got back together, and they broke up and they got back together, and they cheated on each other, and they were enraged, and it was quite dramatic. We don't want them in our periphery, do we? We don't need that kind of hectic mania in relationship in our environment in our community, perhaps, and when we see it, we often need to give some strict advice to drop the chop and to look at the toxic behaviors of both parties involved. In astrological terms, a conjunction between these two bodies really signifies to me a commitment, a sort of sense of diligence and support. In my study, I'm trying to align these asteroids with tarot card significations, and I think I found something. I believe that we can look to the significations of Juno and really come to learn the Queen of Cups in a deeper way. The Queen of Cups is all about commitment and about showing up and being available for emotional intimacy. The Queen of Cups sits at the banks of the ocean and allows the water to lap at their feet, and their cup is never empty. It's gilded and golden and ginormous and ever flowing, ever on offer to the other. The cups are our emotions, our physical self. And so I like to think that this conjunction between Jupiter and Juno playing out in your 11th house, Gemini, might hold a signification as to the support that you might be able to glean from your surroundings right now in a way that can inform your spiritual practice, your spiritual study, your commitment to expanding your mind. I feel that if it's not someone in particular, gender irregardless, we can all be queens if we really wish to be. We can all be kings if we really wish to be too. I'm not so interested in the gender of these significations. It's the principle that's most important. And so if you're in the company of folks that have their cup offered to you, it might be a really good thing for you to do, Gemini, is to recognize that, to look out and to figure out who it might be. Because I see this offer as something quite sincere and quite beneficial to your study. There's a doorway to expanding the mind further that I can really feel with this particular configuration of planets. There's a cooling off period, and I think we need as much water as we can to douse you with, Gemini, after all of this fire in your first house, this Mars combustion. Look to the water, look to the empathetic ones around you, look to your emotional self, your body, your water, your feminine principle that resides in all of us. Look to that, and that will aid you further down the right path to specify what study it is that you're hoping to manifest with this new moon. I think that I'd like to bring in the card signification for Aquarius too, Gemini. Aquarius and the major secrets of the tarot is the star. The star's an extraterrestrial sent to planet Earth to move the waters of life and love for thirsty humanity. It's a beautiful sentiment. There's something so involved in the water body, isn't there? There's something so meticulous about the strategy of the star. When you consider the Aquarian principle, it's got a lot to do with revolutionizing these strategies, revolutionizing the movable parts of a sense of community. It's the great humanitarian of the zodiac is Aquarius. And so for this signification, for this card to be resting in your 9th house, I think that's really lovely. That's a guiding light for you as well as we enter into this new calendar year. Doesn't matter how many New Year's resolutions you've made and forgotten about. It doesn't matter how many diaries you've bought and haven't filled in the first page. You can do that when you're ready. No pressure at all. I think with this retrograde energy to start off the year, it's been a really great invitation to take stock more than anything. We're kind of sitting at a real impasse here. As a culture, I feel that and I believe that to be very true. In my frantic study of the next 6 years, I can really see the pinpoint moments where things are going to shift. All of the outer planets, so Jupiter through to Pluto, they move in slow rhythm and in staccato rhythm too. Jupiter, for example, takes 12 years to move around the zodiac. Pluto takes 248. So you can see how the lining up of their rhythm would be dissonant through the generations. However, over the next 3 years, all of the outer planets will be shifting sign. Now that to me, in a matter of years, it's like dominoes. That to me signifies truly and honestly that we're standing at the very end, the last bastion of an old era, an old way of structuring society. That apex pyramid shape of the hierarchy, I think, is feeling the final rumblings of Pluto's destruction right now. And hopefully as we move forward over these next years, we'll really come to realize the importance of a level playing field. The idea of the rich getting richer off the breaking bones of the workers is not something that can exist anymore. And we also have to alter the way that we've become used to the convenience of such structures. I'm looking at your intuitive tarot now, Gemini, and I see that the portal is open. So I wish for you to take that offer. I think that this Aquarius new moon's shown up just in perfect timing. You're cool enough, you're relaxed enough to receive the message. And I've got the Queen of Pentacles here. So that's Ceres we can talk about. And also the Ten of Pentacles. So it's almost like a vision, isn't it? It's a vision of the legacy, of the future, the new way of being. This Queen of Pentacles energy, this goddess Ceres, is the one that went down to the underworld to take back her daughter from Pluto, who had kidnapped her. The Queen of Pentacles belongs here on Earth, as much as we're talking about quite esoteric, lofty, airy philosophies, and as much as air can sometimes distract you, Gemini, because that's your modality. You do think all the time. You use your brain around the clock. It's very important to bring that principle down to earth and to ground it and to recognize that as much as we wish to see beyond this dimension or that dimension, or consider ourselves in some sort of matrix or some sort of other science fiction type scheme, which I am not criticizing in any way. They're all interesting philosophies that we can talk about. I like to think that the principle of being a human being on Earth, we're here, the star has told us, because we get to experience heaven while we're conscious. If we look and feel the right places, if you can look into the color of the sky and be bedazzled by the blue, if you can marvel at the size of an old tree and its grandeur, if you can hug a dog and feel love unconditional, that's heaven. And that's what we're here to achieve. We achieve it in moments. We know that nothing lasts forever. We know that there is a cyclical nature to this natural world. And that's what gives us hope, that in the darker times, we get to remember that the lighter times are coming too. So the mind is brilliant. The dimensions should be explored. Let's also explore them to make our physical existence all that more powerful. I love you very much, Gemini. That's your reading. Do head over to umaruby.com and get your birth chart read by me if you've not already. If you have, you can book yourself a year ahead reading. I've got all of the transits mapped out and ready to go. We can journey together specifically to your chart and pinpoint the moments of juiciest activation. You can also put some money in the tip jar at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby. I'll be with you in 2 weeks for the full moon in Leo. So until then, we're back in business, baby. I'm glad to be here. I love you heaps, Gemini. Thanks for your company. You take care. Bye.